Warner Brothers have not learned their lesson from Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, Multiverses, Mortal Kombat 1's aggressive monetization, or even how Gotham Knights was initially conceived and perceived pre-launch, as we're getting yet another live service multiplayer game featuring DC characters. Ewan, what the hell's going on? Why can't they figure out that usually when the consumer or the customer says no, you don't just keep trying to force the product that they don't want over and over and over again? There are only going to be more bodies strewn aside as this plays out. Now, there's a little bit more information about this that I want to throw in there. There's also a market report in regards to live service titles for the year so far about how stagnant that entire space is within gaming. But immediate reactions, and then we'll get to trying to predict what this is, because apparently it's based on an iconic DC franchise.
Well, first reaction was the scream.
Yes.
Right there. Second reaction is, how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? It truly kind of beggars belief, especially after, we had the Damian Wayne game get cancelled and that became Gotham Knights, which I actually kind of liked, but it was still, you're right to point out, a halfway house between a live service game and the single player co-op-y story-driven thing that we probably all wanted. So yeah, this is just stupid, especially after the reports that came earlier this year, talking about how WB Games Montreal had previously pitched a John Constantine game that got rejected. There was the whole hoo-ha around a Flash game, which I think conceptually I don't see how that would work in execution. To be honest, one of those characters that I don't think you could do in a game. I want
to believe.
But that got binned off too, and then we heard that they were rumored to be working on a Game of Thrones title, I believe.
Yes.
So... I'm happy that they're still going to be in the DC space, but, at the expense of the Wonder Woman game and Monolith Studios, we're going back to the live service even though Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League cost Warner Brothers Games a whole buttload of millions of dollars. It's just bonkers.
Apparently this has been in development for a little while as well, and it's WB Montreal. It's the guys that used to do Arkham Origins. And yeah, the actual the leak or whatever, it's not necessarily a leak because it is an official job posting over on the Warner Brothers website. It is asking for an executive producer on the project, but it does note that the game is based on one of the iconic IPs from the vast Warner Brothers and DC Comics catalog, and they want the person to oversee post-launch content and live service strategy, ensuring ongoing player engagement, staying informed on industry trends and player expectations to keep the game competitive and relevant. So assumedly a whole bunch of skins. Hatsune Miike, just put as many of them in as possible. Maybe a King Kong kill animation if we're going to be doing Call of Duty stuff. We will see.
DC's already got enough apes, man. We got Gorilla Grodd. We got Ultra Humanite. We got
Metamorpho maybe becomes
Gorilla City.
Yeah,
it could be
we talked about. I want to get to this market report in a little bit, but we talked about this before we started recording about that whole assumed vision that DC's supposed to have, where you had David Zaslav come into Warner Brothers, replace the dude whose name I always forget.
It was Walter Hamada that was the head of DC Film, I believe. I could be getting that wrong, but Walter Hamada was the previous head honcho.
Right, because Zaslav came in and has made a ton of boneheaded decisions that we've talked about a lot on different videos, forgetting which IPs he even is in control of. But apparently part of that was appointing James Gunn as the general sort of visionary, the Kevin Feige, if you want to give him a term, of DC. And part of that as well...
he can make movies.
He can make movies and try and unify some identities around certain brands. One part of that was assigning one voice actor or one actor to like Batman, regardless of whatever the medium was, which none of that stuff has come true yet. But my overall thought is, because Superman did so well and because he was saying that was the tip of the spear of the new DC stuff, is the next game, does that all line up? Do they try and do something that is synergist?
I really don't want this to intercede with the DCU as it exists. I mean, I loved Superman, and I like the overall vision that James Gunn and Peter Safran has for the live-action contingent of that mythos. And obviously, Creature Commandos was well-liked. We've got Peacemaker Season 2 coming out. Supergirl is next year. We've got a whole bunch of movies coming out in the next few years. However, I hate the idea of the games being locked into that interpretation, because I feel like that, DC is so many different things. It shouldn't just be the one thing. So I hope that's not the case, and I hope that maybe there has been some pushback on the gaming level, although, knowing WB Games, developers and producers there have had a very hard time of asserting their wishes and wants to people higher up the food chain. So, who knows? I don't think it would be Superman, because I would hope that if we're going to do a Superman game, it's going to be single player, it's going to be like a proper, Arkhamized style experience in terms of just like, we're making this a love letter to the character, and we're going to give you the full Superman, rigmarole or whatever. In terms of a live service property, and thinking of the timelines in terms of how long it takes to get a AAA game turned around, we obviously know that Justice League will eventually be coming along. It would make sense to do a Justice League live-action game because the roster is practically infinite or unlimited, if you are familiar with that TV show, because it was the best cartoon of all time. So, yeah, Justice League would make a lot of sense. I would also say that maybe you could do something involving the Legion of Superheroes, which is a slightly more obscure property, but does involve Superman and Supergirl set in the future. There's a whole bunch of really cool characters in there. Or, alternatively, it'll never happen, even though it's the coolest thing that DC has in its entire library, a New Gods game, where you play you're fighting Darkseid and you're playing as Orion and Mr. Miracle and Big Barda. I would love that. That'd be great. But,
I feel like one really good talking point that came out of Superman, the movie, is going into that movie and having no idea who someone like Mr. Terrific is, and then being like, oh, that guy rules.
Your first step into a brave new world.
Exactly. In many ways, more ways than one. And like with that whole thing being like, okay, this world seems fascinating, you can make me care. It doesn't need to all be, DC is only Batman and Superman. It can be everything else. And I just kind of would hope there was a unified vision of some degree going forward. Before we get into the next half of this and talk about some market research and why none of this is actually going to work, let's talk about something that does work, NordVPN.
It's more important than ever to get yourself a VPN. With NordVPN, you can protect your data and keep up with region-locked TV and content. Best of all, you can get signed up for 2 years of Nord with an up to 76% discount and 4 months off, plus a $50 Amazon gift card. All you have to do is click the link below or scan the QR code on screen now to make the most of this great deal.
And we're back. I want to talk about some marketing data here. I did want to throw in, like I said, this market report over from Newzoo, looking at consumer spending habits and general trends across 2025. Now, it was published at the end of April, but I feel like it gets brought up quite a lot, just because every time a studio decides to keep going ahead with live service stuff, people point to different analytic firms and go, have you actually looked at the data for the love of God?
Have you looked at the burning car wreckage recently?
Yes, stop trying to sell me the same burning car over and over again. But Newzoo stated...
Those are speed holes.
It's not a bug, it's a feature. Newzoo states, according to their findings, that player growth has plateaued, turning the live service market into a zero-sum battle for attention. All business models from premium to free-to-play do remain viable. However, scale and success vary dramatically by platform. For many titles, growth comes from capturing part of the share, not expanding the total audience. Players are overwhelmed by an ever-increasing amount of content, yet spending more time on fewer titles. Marketing is more important than ever, as discoverability is at an all-time low, and publishers have a role to play, but branding, quality, and reach of influence will be critical. So literally, there's a pie, and you can try and get a piece of that pie, but for the most part, people are locked in what they're going to be playing and the time they're going to dedicate to it.
Oh, terrifying.
They can't take anything else on.
What if this is their attempt at doing a DC Rivals?
Yeah.
Like Marvel.
Oh God. Well, they said this was in production for a little while, and the last thing that WB Montreal did was a while ago.
Gotham Knights, yeah.
Yeah, it was Gotham Knights, which was 2022.
And they did some support on Suicide Squad as well. I think that the thing that the big alarm bells with all of this is that I think if you're going to do a Marvel's Avengers style thing, then maybe take some cues from Helldivers. Don't make the environments samey. Take us to different planets in the DC universe and make it all cosmic. And I think that way you'd maybe have a little bit more fun with it. But don't try and do the Suicide Squad route, because that's not going to help anyone.
Well, the thing is as well, they just tried to do the whole menagerie of characters thing in multiverses, and then that initially had goodwill, but they took it offline for a year. They put more monetary practices into it. They didn't honor people's
No, they didn't. It's not like purchases. I put money into that game or anything. It's not like I lost.
There was the whole conversion where they changed a lot of the currencies around, and people just ended up losing out.
They slowed the game down. They changed engine. There's a really good video that Matt McMuscles did on it last week on what happened that you should all go check out if you're interested in it now.
Yeah, Matt McMuscles stuff is awesome in general. His What Happened series is great for tons of failed games. But still, they tried this. They tried a DC fighting game. I know it was other properties, but Batman and Superman were in that, and they couldn't maintain that. So it's like,
I think that's the big red flag with all of this, is that we know for a fact that WB Games as a whole are bad at managing live service titles. Even the good ones like Multiverses, which started out really strongly, they ran that thing into the ground with their own greed and stupid decisions. So it's a case of, how can you make this an attractive prospect for anyone who is familiar with WB's repertoire? And if it's a DC title, you're expecting a plugged-in audience that is going to be aware that for the last 10 years, you've kind of shunted everyone around. So there's no goodwill whatsoever. You are basically really swimming against the tide in both an industry trend thing and also against your own reputation, which is not a good combo at all. And again, I have so much sympathy for the people at WB Games Montreal because Arkham Origins, really underrated title. I know I go on about it all the time, but it is. And Gotham Knights, despite all the live service kind of jank, that was better than I think people gave it credit for.
I love my time with Gotham Knights. It's just funny because if you play it now, and obviously it was the case at launch, you see the remnants of the live service model in there. You see the crafting components, the schematics, the things that would become the infinite content loop that you can just ignore when you play the game. It's at some point they had to ship it, and I still end up having fun with the story and the way that game is structured. We've talked about it before. It is a cool game, but going forward, Warner Brothers are doubling down on live service stuff, even though, as the data shows, there's only so much of that pie that they can get, and I will be amazed if they can pry people away from every other live service game right now.
And also, just to add one thing onto this, I still can't believe that they've done this over the Wonder Woman title, particularly now as Absolute Wonder Woman, one of the current ongoing series that DC has. That's just been nominated for a bunch of Eisners.
Right, okay.
Wonder Woman would have been a perfect... That for Monolith was the one. That was the ticket to bring everything back, and they just keep pooing the bed.